welcome back, everybody. I'm glad to see you guys again. Last week, we, of course, naturally had some personal issues, but now that's been solved. And we'd like to welcome you back to episode 122 of New York Red Bulls Discussion Group, the podcast. I'm Garry Redmond here. Greetings and salutations, and at your service. So we're going to talk about a lot of things, of course. It's going to be a big Derby weekend, but before we even get there, okay, we have the New York Red Bulls and Atlanta United FC. We're going to review that particular match. And, of course, after the break, New York Red Bulls versus NYCFC, which is becoming to be one of the biggest games of the season. And, of course, we're going to review Gotham FC action. Of course, New York Red Bulls 2 as well. They had a pretty good weekend. Plus, all your hot takes, of course, from all of you in the live. I see you guys all signing in and everything. It's good to see you guys again. Of course, and all the predictions, of course, for the upcoming matches. And, of course, as always, if you happen to miss our live show, you can actually catch the recording on YouTube, Gold TV, and Spotify.com. Don't forget, all of our episodes are uploaded on the very next day after we're all said and done. Of course, on our YouTube channel, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let us know how we're doing and everything. We want to make the show one of the best ones out there, and this is where you guys come in. And speaking of, let us know how we're doing. We welcome any feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. By all means, shoot us an email. We have an email address, of course, rbdgthepodcast@gmail.com. That's rbdgthepodcast@gmail.com. And, of course, as always, well, we have an ongoing bet with a very good friend of mine, of course, who is a lifelong NYCFC fan. How appropriate as we get ready to the Derby. We won the weekend. That's right. So the aggregate goals apply here. So we'll blow that horn in just 1 second. So anytime when the two teams win, lose, or draw, that's the aggregate goals. They scored 1 goal versus Miami. We scored 2 versus Atlanta. And with that said, we're going to bring in, of course, my 2 cohorts. Of course, the one and only Carlos Orlando Cano, on the road, by the way, and, of course, Nicholas Lianos. But before we even get underway, one of the reasons why Nick, and I thank you very much for subbing for our good friend, Miguel, is because he's busy being a grandfather. He was a grandfather while we were away. So let me show you some pictres of the poor guy. And there he is. There's our little prince right now. He's hanging out with me. And of course, this shirt that he's wearing kills me. The grandfather. I just, my heart melts, but I love that, but I definitely love that shirt. I mean, you should see the shirts that the parents wore. Okay. One, I guess the father was saying was, I believe it was AC/DC, and it said Dada. So they're definitely, into the musical theme and everything else. And, definitely kudos to the parents and, of course, to Miguel himself. One more generation of the Nunez family is born. And as they say, the story continues. Speaking of which, okay, we're talking about New York Red Bull versus Atlanta United FC. One team is trying to make the playoffs. One team is trying to cement their place in the playoffs. Carlos, going into this match, did you feel that this was a must-win for the Red Bulls?
Not a must-win, but it would have been nice to win. It was a super frustrating game, I thought, in my opinion. We were going back and forth in the thread. I caught most of the second half. As I'm traveling for work, so I caught the second part, the second half, and especially at the end, right? I mean, a lot of dramatics, which makes for great soccer, right? It's what we all want. We had no business losing the game. I was just super frustrated. You look at the table, right, and we're in great position. Which is nice, but you look at our actual standings and 14 draws. It's just like how many of the if you look
how many of those
would have been wins, right? And you never want to play the woulda, coulda, shoulda game. Like, it is what it is. But one of the things that I've always said, right, is Saturday night they had an opportunity, I felt, to despite all the dramatics, to actually make the comeback and win, right? And that's the biggest difference, right? So that's why, it's hard for me to blame the fan base that, will say, yeah, we're going to make the playoffs and then we're just going to choke and lose, right? Because if you can't win a game like the one on Saturday, where there were so many opportunities to just win that game outright, and even at the very end, where Elias misses the penalty, which again, like, that's so Metro, right? But then he actually makes up for it and ties it, right? And I had put in our messenger thread in all caps, I was like, go win the effing game. Like that's what they needed to do. And they, again, yeah, you get a point, which never hurts, right? But in some ways it still just kind of feels like a loss. So it was a little deflating, I guess. Especially now going into a Derby weekend where City drew, but I feel like they have the momentum coming into Red Bull Arena. Suddenly we can't win at Red Bull Arena. Granted, we've only lost once, but we can't win outright. So, you're between a rock and a hard place. So it's just tough. I would have loved to see them win on Saturday. That's what it comes down to.
Nick, did you feel that, because going on to Carlos's point, that yes, they needed to win. Okay, we've said this 3 days prior that this, based on these scenarios, that they could get themselves into the playoffs. More on that later, but they haven't won a game since. I mean, it's been a while. Fans were getting a little antsy. You see it on the message boards, on Twitter, everywhere else. All of a sudden, we seems to forget how to win games. Did you see that as a problem with the team coming in?
Well, I like the way they came out. There was a lot of positives coming out of this game. You had to be, after the complete last 3 games coming out completely flat, we did come out on fire, something that we haven't seen in a while. They were pressing, they were working, the ball was moving around, they were getting good quality chances.
Chicago pissed everybody off, literally. I mean, I've never seen the coach so angry. I mean, he was annoyed, he was frustrated. Carlos, after the game during the interview, he was angry. He just like, okay, wait a minute, hold up. It's almost like we forgot how to play. I mean, I put the post-game interview up, of course, I'm up on for the group for everyone to see what we saw. We saw and heard that night. Coach was not happy, and it was visible.
Against Chicago, you shouldn't have been happy, because that was just a game we just didn't show up. We showed up for a small sample size. We just basically cameoed the game. Got a goal when we did show up, and the rest of the time we didn't. That wasn't a good performance. We deserved to lose that game. And of course, we lost it on the same thing, which drives me insane, is zonal marking. Every time that we semi-clear the ball, as everybody scrambles to go back to positions, we wound up having John Tolkien in the middle playing a center back against a 6'3" guy.
Ouch.
And a guy is 6'3". John Tolkien is not 6'3". Bring space, header into the back of the net. We lose Chicago. This game wasn't like this. This is the one against Atlanta. I liked Venzier. Venzier got off the bench, got off this night, and you could saw the team embrace it.
Yeah,
and everybody was happy about it. And he played his best game since Cincinnati, and that was back in May. And if we get that performance going forward, he's got 4 games left. We have 4 games left. He's got to give us that performance to end the season.
Put that in a bottle and then use it from here on out.
Reproduce it. Do what you got to do. Venzier, you give us this, we'll be okay.
And it would have been nice to see him finish that game like that. Also, again, in the second half, was just super frustrating, and that's what. And full disclosure, I didn't watch the first half because I wasn't anywhere to be able to watch it. And I got back in time for pretty much. I think I missed like 5 minutes of the second half at the start. But when he came off again, and just going by what commentary was saying and the banter and the thread and whatnot, and he comes off. Like
I didn't like that. I didn't like him.
I didn't like that.
Yeah, everyone,
everyone in the press box was wondering about that. Carlos, everyone was like, "Wait a minute, Is he hurt or something like that? Why is he coming
Yeah, but
off?
the thing is, Gary, is that that happens all the time. Like, we just don't, I think most of the time we just don't really, we kind of glance over it because they either win or they draw, and it's an overall solid performance. So we all just kind of glance over it, but that's not uncommon. Like, 75 minutes in, and the best player on the field always comes off. And I mean, I understand why, from the whatever you want to call it, right? I know this isn't the NBA, but the best thing I can think of is load management, right? Like, they're watching people's minutes and yada yada. But, like, again, you want to win that game, and Vanzier, not to mention that Vanzier can use every possible minute to gain that confidence that he needs to be the striker we want him to be, right? And he comes off the field, and it's like, again, like it's, and I know it's hard, right? Like, I never want to I'm not a manager for a reason, right? And I never want to put myself in those shoes, so I try not to pass a ton of judgment. But I feel like at some points you just got to really go. A coach should really use his gut and just say, you know what, just you're at it tonight. Like, go for it. You know what I mean?
Like, should have come off the field that day. Morgan was not having a real good game.
Right.
Morgan was the one I would have taken off because he did find some spots. He wasn't finding enough. He had that one good chance where he tried to chip, but besides that, it was pretty much.
And the one thing too with Morgan that I'll say that the commentary also mentioned was the fact that he didn't take the penalty. He gave it to Elias, which, I guess, from that, like, from a certain perspective, it's selfless, and you want somebody else to, but to the commentator's point that was doing the analysis, that's where you sort of, you're not the captain, right? But you're the top scorer on the team. I mean, you take the ball and you put it on the spot, and that's all you. Like, it would have been nice to see that from Morgan, but it is what it is at the end of the day.
That comes down to his spot. Him on the spot this year has not been good, though. It's 2 out of 4.
Oh, well, speaking of Vanzier, the party definitely got started in the 31st minute. I mean, the game in the beginning, like you said, Nick, they came out like a house of fire. They really wanted it. It looked, they looked good. They really wanted this game, and of course, it paid off. And of course, in the 31st minute, Dante Vanzier.
Tolkien's ball in. He's got a piece of it. Tolkien gets the rest. Good cross, goal! The long wait is over. Dante Vanzier breaks his personal deadlock for the first time in 140 days. The perfect time to give Red Bull New York the lead.
Well, it comes from the service, and it's a question mark of whether this ball will be onside or not from Tolkien. And from a striker's perspective, if you don't have confidence, the best thing sometimes for you is not having any time to think. And it's a wonderful ball across from Tolkien, and Vanzier just has to react. He doesn't have time to think and just tucks it in. First time touch. It's great effort from Tolkien to keep this in play. It looks like he gets to it before the line, and it's a great finish there from Vanzier. He's been desperate to put one in the back of the net. And a great effort play from New York Red Bulls to take the lead.
You can see how upset Guzan was when that ball just simply he was looking for help from his defense and never got it. And Vanzier was just at the right place at the right time. I would, that it's basically a poacher's goal, but it was good for him to score that goal to get off the schneid. And the fans, once it was aware that it was Vanzier that scored that goal, fans went nuts. They was like, oh, got it. It finally, and hopefully that this will be many goals to come. So you're right about, him coming off later in the game. I was wondering if he can able to finish that game so you can get more confidence going into the Derby, because you're going to need him, right, guys? You're definitely going to need him going forward down the stretch, because if he's going to revert back to his original form, I don't know. I mean, you're trying to get one of your strikers online and get just confidence back. And I agree with you, Carlos. I mean, it would have been nice to see that, nice of him to finish the game, see if you can able to get, that third goal, but it just simply wasn't to be. So, the vibes were doing great. Everything was just fine. And then just before halftime, Carbello decided to do a ridiculous foul in the box, which led to a penalty kick. And, of course, naturally, we have Aleksej Miranchuk with the equalizer.
In a time of the season where goals matter more than ever before, Miranchuk did it so spectacularly against Miami on Wednesday. It's Miranchuk who scores brilliantly. 2 giant goals in 2 gargantuan Major League Soccer games for Aleksej Miranchuk and Atlanta United back in the realm of relevance.
Just so calm here, just casually steps up. We saw him pick out the top corner against Inter Miami, and here he just passes it in. He waits for Coronel to lean one way and then just coolly slots it the next, and the timing of the goal is massive to bring Atlanta United level. Desperate hunt for the playoffs, and important timing just before halftime.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of 2 penalty kicks that happened in that match. The other, we'll talk about that in about a second. I mean, the one that was missed, it was the biggest moment of the game that took place in the 87th minute, and Elias Manuel stepped up and went right to Brad Guzan, and the fans were just basically the atmosphere just died at that point. People were, we're just pretty much saying, okay, it's going to be a draw. Let's all go home. But the crazy thing was, it was a perfect swing, because shortly after that moment, you had a guy by the name of Edwin Mosquera, who came in just about 3 minutes later off the bench, not even 10 seconds, since he got on the field, and did this.
Here is Mosquera, the fresh-legged Colombian. Mosquera! Oh my word! Off the bench and into the headlines! Is that the goal that gives Atlanta United life in the fight for the playoffs?
The bench, and just dances his way into the box there and doesn't hesitate. Just creates an inch against Dylan Nealis, and that's all he needs to pick out that top corner. No chance for Coronel. The Colombian beats the Paraguayan into the net, and Atlanta United, from a saved penalty from Brad Guzan on one end, and then in extra time, Mosquera makes the difference.
Yeah, saved penalty on one end, back the other way less than a minute later, and then Nick, you talked about Dylan Nealis and how he was abused all night. This is yet another example.
Listen, he was having a hard time keeping up. I don't know how to pronounce that guy's name. So, Saba, that was his name. Jersey was Saba on the back. I can't pronounce his name.
Labadense.
Yeah. He was just lining up against him and just going, all right, you're not fast enough. I got you. Don't worry about it. And they just kept floating the balls at him all day. This one, listen, it's a great shot. You can't really blame Dylan. He gave him maybe a foot, and the guy put a perfect shot in. It's a perfect shot. I'll give him credit for most of the season. He's been very good on the right back. The one limitation he does have, he's not fleet of foot. And against some teams, Atlanta, it showed up.
It definitely showed up. I mean, the killer thing for me was that Dylan used to play his opponents, Carlos, a little tighter, so they wouldn't able to get off shots like this. But lately, he's been giving these guys a lot of space, and that's a concern for me. Is that a concern to you as well?
Yeah, of course, right? Like, anytime that you give anyone even a little leeway in this league, right, they're gonna eat that up. So yeah, it's certainly a concern.
Yeah. So in a span of less than a minute, okay, we went from the highs to the lows of the low. Folks were looking at a draw. Now they're looking at a loss. Okay.
People left. People were leaving after that goal.
Right. Exactly. Folks were like,
I'm in 132 and 131.
Right.
131.
Folks were heading to the parking lot, Nick. I mean,
what? Oh, man. Guy, one thing with the game was like, I'm out of here. I can't wait for this. I'm not watching this anymore. He left. I was like, whatever.
I mean, of course, I couldn't leave. I was at the press box. I had work to do. So I couldn't just, walk out. But I can understand there were screams of people walking out, but less than, 5 minutes later, just when things were looking bad, just when things we were looking at basically yet another second loss at Red Bull Arena, hero time. And I mean, this is probably the best goal out there.
He was disappointed they didn't take all 3 points against Inter Miami and wanted them to get greedy, and they haven't settled for anything in this one. He's continued to change the team.
He missed the target, back across goal. Williams not clearing away. Has salvaged an equalising goal. We are level with just under 3 minutes to play.
Ten-to-hand stuff, and it's the center back, Noah Isla, who stands this up to Dylan Nealis, and it's a courageous header from him across the box, in the presence of mind from the 16-year-old Julian Hall to square this across to Elias Manuel.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Toads, we're going a little crazy there, but sorry about that. But, yeah, I mean, it was, it was a goal that was needed. Was it a one that gave us the win? No, but
we almost got it.
We almost got it pretty much at the end. I mean, this match, boys, had everything. There was a lot of drama. There was a lot of, shots on goal. There was a lot of twists and turns. But the one thing it did not have, of course, was the victory. And the score by the score of 2-2. Van Zier in the 30th minute. Moranchuk with a penalty in the 43 minutes and 3 minutes into halftime. Mascara with that near heartbreaker 2 minutes into stoppage time. And Manuel, that's his third of the season, 7 minutes into stoppage time. Van Zier, he scored his third MLS goal of the season, his fifth of his career. Van Zier tallied his third goal contribution in his last 5 MLS matches. Now, Tolkien, who gave the first assist of his season and his 12th of his MLS career. Chatham, New Jersey boy, local boy. He's native and recorded his 16th assist for the club in all competitions, which ties his teammate, Kyle Duncan, for the most assists by a competition by a defender in franchise history. Kudos. Tolkien tied also, guess who? I'm going to give you, this is you remember the former Red Bulls. I'll give you a hint. He was a DJ. Three seconds.
I'm lost. Sorry.
Jan Gunnar Soli. That guy.
Wow.
Okay. For third place in franchise history for most assists by a defender. Manuel scored his 7th goal of the season and his 12th of his MLS career. And Julian Hall, that kid, this guy's, I mean, he's his first career assist became the youngest player to record an assist in franchise history at 16 years, 181 days old. What we were doing at age 16? No, we weren't saving his club's butt every so once in a while. He also became the third youngest player in MLS history to assist, only behind Freddie Adu, remember him, and Gianluca Buzio. Third youngest player in MLS history to record an assist. And now Hall has registered a goal contribution in back-to-back matches. So I'll leave this to you guys. I mean, we all agree that this was a game they needed to win. Nick, I'll start with you. Satisfied with the draw or no?
No, not satisfied with the draw, but we'll take it after being on the 92nd minute giving up the goal.
Oh, by the way, Brad Guzan, man of the match, voted by everybody in the press box. Go ahead.
The thing I thought, I just go back to this. Julian Hall is a 16-year-old kid that was the first option off the bench, and he's been coming on strong. Can we get this kid some more minutes? I've
been saying I've been politicking for this kid to start. Honestly, I mean, what do you got to lose? I mean,
Toronto, that's the game you probably should start. It's the midweek game. It's coming off the Derby. It's the game that you basically, I would put everybody. If you're going to do the switch, what you normally do, because you're playing 3 games in 8 days, that's the game.
That's the game
for the break. That's the perfect time to start him. You can't, and he's shown that he knew the play wasn't dead, and the guy missed the clearance, took the ball and centered it, and didn't even wait 2 seconds to think about it. He just threw it right back into the middle of the park, and Manuel finished it cleanly. Give him some credit. Take the draw. Were we happy with it? No. But we were going to come away with nothing.
Yeah, it's better than 0. 1 point is better than 0, right, guys? I mean, it take it for what you can. The one thing that I asked a question in post game, Carlos, about Hall is his maturity level. I mean, when he's on the field, he has this this big veteran presence. Like, he's done this before, and I kind of complimented him about that. And I wondered where it was coming from, during his days with New York Red Bull too. And he said it was part of it, that he, during the his what's the word I'm looking for? His development. Sorry about that. During his development, this is something they were able to teach, and he pretty much had a very high ceiling about that. So, the last time I saw a player with that type of high ceiling and that type of veteranship, so to speak, Tyler Adams. You agree?
Yeah, I think we see some of that, right? In terms of it's hard to really gauge, right? Because to Nick's point, like, he just needs to play more, and we're not seeing that, right? Like, it's funny because if you think back to Tyler Adams, right, who I think is a great example, Tyler Adams had his coming out party, if you will, for the first team during an exhibition match versus Chelsea, right? Which we, in hindsight, like, again, most of the fan base was like, why are we playing these games? And, we should be focusing on the season and, things like that. That's a whole separate conversation. But I bring that up because, again, like, he's coming off of the bench. We don't get to see him much. And so it's hard to, again, establish yourself when you don't get the minutes to do so. But he's making the most of his time. He's got that goal. He's got the assist now, in that moment. So, the ceiling's high, obviously. So more to come from him, I hope.
Yeah, I think I would love to see him start against Toronto. He's already got his feet wet. He's more than getting his feet wet. He's basically swimming at this point. So why not give him, the time that he pretty much earned, at this point. The win, the good news, bad news is bad news. We didn't win, obviously. The good news is that the Red Bulls stay right where they are, basically in 4th place with 44 points. Right behind them is Orlando City with 43. Charlotte and New York City both tied with 41. Toronto with 36, along with Philadelphia, who destroyed DC. So they now own the 9th spot and the 8th spot to Toronto. So as it stands right now, Miami, Cincinnati, Columbus, New York. Should the season end tonight, as they say, we're facing Orlando at Red Bull Arena in the best of 3 first round, after Toronto and Philadelphia try to knock each other out, and the winner takes on, of course, Miami for the number 1 seed. So that's the playoff picture right now. And yes, Carlos, we're also live on X as well. Hence the blue chart, plus the blue check. So it was a good news, bad news thing. We didn't lose. We did win the weekend, which is kind of nice. So we already blew our horn a couple of times. So all is well. And next, of course, is the big one, is the big derby between New York City and, of course, the Red Bulls. And we're going to take ourselves a quick break. Carlos is going to break down what is known as the story with New York City and why, when they come to Red Bull Arena, they're going to be missing a few big pieces. Stick around, folks. We'll be back in 30 seconds. All right, New York City FC comes into play. The last time we faced those guys were Buck up in Flushing, way back in May. If you remember, it was a 2-1 loss over in Citi Field. I'm sure the Red Bulls remember that loss, and they're looking for some payback. Carlos, this is where you school everybody on New York City FC, and what have you been doing since then?
Well, yeah, so Saturday night, 7:30 p.m. kickoff at Red Bull Arena, round 2 of the derby for this season. As Garry mentioned, back in May, that was a loss in whatever baseball field they decided to play that game on.
One of many.
But yeah, so the city comes to Red Bull Arena with a player suspended from a red card, two players down with injuries, Burke Risa and Malachi Jones. Listen, City hasn't won a game in six games.
Ouch.
Yes, they have the draw, from the weekend against Miami. So, like I said earlier, they're riding a bit of momentum, in my opinion, just because I think the expectation was that they were going to lose that game, especially with Messi scoring early. I think most people thought that was a wash. They came back and they were able to salvage a point. But listen, we lost on their not so home turf in May, and obviously we want to get that win back. Historically, we have always fared well versus City at Red Bull Arena, so I hope that we're able to put together a win. This is a game before they go on the road for 2 games before closing out the season at home versus Columbus. So, again, these points are definitely important. I mean, they can still obviously, we, like we were saying before the show started, the top seed is, I think, pretty much spoken for, unless Miami has a huge drop off over the course of the next 5 or 6 games, so whatever they have left.
They need to
but yeah, I mean, they, at this point, we're really talking about, are they able to maybe draw something up? But even then, right, they're sitting at number 4, but Columbus and Cincinnati are at 3 and 2 respectively with 56 points. So, the Red Bulls would essentially have to win out to have any kind of chance of even moving up a spot at that. So I think at this point, you just want to get on the momentum train, beat a rival in New York City, and get some points before you hit the road.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's the road, the road trip is not going to be gimmies, not by a long shot. One of them, of course, is a trip down to Atlanta, and of course, Atlanta's basically playing with their lives, depending on it, because they're literally right outside the zone, right? So that it's a must win for them. But then
Atlanta's going to have, obviously still something to play for. Is like you said, they're pretty much going to be fighting for that last spot. But also just remember too that going to Atlanta is never easy.
That's tough.
Well, not just that, but their home crowd. I mean, their home crowd is one to reckon with. So,
and we're playing on turf, not our favorite surface whatsoever.
Not at all.
It never is.
Not anyone's favorite surface. Let's be honest.
Stink on turf. So
they're two road trips that Carlos alluded to. First stop is in Canada versus Toronto at BMO Field. And then, of course, they're over at Mercedes-Benz Stadium on the 5th of October. They're back home on the 19th for the grand finale against Columbus, who put us in a serious world of hurt way back earlier in the season. Nick, I know that this is pretty much a cliche question, so I'm going to ask it anyway. How massive is this game for both teams?
It's a must for both teams. Both teams desperately need to win. As Carlos brought it up, both teams are winless in 6. We got 3 points. Both teams have 3 points in 6 games. Both teams stink. I think both teams need it desperately. Now, our main thing is Forsberg coming back? Are we going to get the captain back?
Or should I say, if he does come back, which Forsberg are we getting? Are we getting someone who wants to hit the ground running, or are we getting someone who's going to be a little rusty at first, and he looks like he's playing in preseason?
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead, Garry.
My concern is that we're going to get more of the former, not the, we're basically going to get the latter, not the former. He's been out for a while. I mean, away from his teammates where everybody is flying all over the place. And what I would like to see him come in hot and right off the presses and, contribute to a point where, he can be very effective. My gut tells me otherwise. And even the coach was like, look, don't expect this man to stand on his head and, get 2 goals and 4 assists. That may or may not happen. But just being on the field as far as confidence, getting the boy, having to bring those, his young guys over the line, is that at least that helpful? Because you told me about Forsberg and his way to calm the team down and help them become clinical. Is that going to be an asset for this upcoming match?
You're getting a veteran with a lot of big game experience coming on the field. He will open up space for Van Zier and Morgan if he starts the game. You're getting that presence. He will definitely bring a fire to this team. I think you will get that. You get that initial push. Now, what do we take advantage of that initial him on the field, him returning, that initial fire the return of your best player?
Mm-hmm.
We got to take advantage of it, and especially with NYCFC missing their best center back, he's out, suspended. Their best forward, who caused us enough damage in Rodriguez, he was just all over the place.
Rodriguez, pain.
He was all over the place. He was all over the place in the game in Flushing and City Field. Hey man, we got an opportunity. Both teams are desperate. If we play like that first 15 minutes that we came out with against Atlanta, and the way we started the second half against Atlanta too, because we came out on fire again. Guzan was just standing on his head, which happens to us repeatedly. I think this is a game that it points down to the stars being the stars. It's going to be a fight. It's going to be nasty. There's hatred on and off the field. We know what's going to happen. Let's get to this. Hopefully, they come out with the same way they came out in this game against Atlanta. We'll get a better result than we did against Atlanta.
And I think that's the key, isn't it, Carlos? Having that start and staying consistent with it. I mean, Lord knows how many times we've seen this team, even just simply take their foot off the gas just a little bit, only to wind up being burned. I mean, this is one of your pet peeves. Like, okay, you started hot. Why can't you stay hot? Do you see that that's going to be a path to at least 3 points? Because forget the Derby for one sitting. That's a game they have to win, by the way.
Yeah, and to me, it's not so much like having your foot on the gas the whole time, right? Like, I think we all love when they get off to those really hot starts and they score early, but in some ways it's almost to their detriment, because when they do start off hot early and they get that lead early, they're for the most part never able to hold it. Like, we always have to suffer to get whatever result it is that we get, right? Which
is it really suffering though?
Listen, if you didn't feel like
kidding.
you had,
I'm kidding.
If you didn't feel like you had some time shaved off of your life as a fan even on Saturday, and again, and obviously that that also speaks to the fact that we know that this team is lacking in certain positions, and they've lost players and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, like it or not, at this point in time, this is the team that we have for the run through the rest of the regular season, and for however long, we make it through the playoffs. This is what we have. Granted, yes, we have some folks who will hopefully come back from injury, in short order. At this point, I feel like if I don't see Forsberg until, the Columbus game, or maybe one of the last games on the road and then the Columbus game, so he can start to get those game minutes, so he's like fully ready to go for the playoff run.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because I also wouldn't want to see him just have his first match back in the playoffs. Sort of build up. But at this point, let's not risk, take any great risk here.
Taken out by a slide tackle and lose his kneecap and be like,
exactly.
Okay.
I mean, at this point, again, just stay consistent, number one. But number two, stay disciplined, right? Like stay the course, hold the lead. How many times don't we see this team just not be able to hold the lead, and that's troubling.
Right.
And if you can't hold the lead in the playoffs, again, we're gonna suffer. Like we're literally gonna watch these games, and we're gonna be biting our fingernails and pulling our hair out, and Garry doesn't have hair to pull out, so because he's been watching the team for so long and pulling his hair out anyway,
it's all gone.
Left. You know what I'm saying? But so again, four matches left. This first one against a heated rival. To Nick's point, we know those games always get a little nasty, a little dirty. Cards will be flying, I'm sure. Right, on and off the pitch, and so but at this point, embrace the Derby and the rivalry for what it is, but let's just get 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the whole thing. I mean, we don't want to walk off basically with with another point and be like, oh, come on, again. I mean, and you want to go in hot, and this is a question to both of you. We hear this all the time, that whenever we have a young crew, right, such as this one, and we look at teams like Philly, okay, who is pretty much a veteran group, who know the deal. They may start out slow, but look what's happening now, right? They're hard charging, toward that last point. I mean, I guess a question is, your team, say Orlando, right? And you're sitting in the catbird seat in 5th place. Season's over. You already know your opponent. Who would you rather face? A young crew like the Red Bulls, who may be young but somewhat dangerous, or Philly, who's been there, done that?
That's such a hard question to answer, Garry, because
I thought about this for a second. That's because
it's hard, right? Because Philadelphia, we know, has that pedigree, like you said, been there, done that. Like, they're a team that grinds. They've been to the near promised land, if you will, right? Just coming
came within the goal.
right, of the Cup. This season has been, up and down for them. Obviously, they're gaining some momentum now and trying to hold on to that last playoff spot. The playoffs are always such a toss-up. I mean, I think, if you're asking me, on the spot, I would probably rather face the younger team than face a team that I guess historically just has that pedigree of being able to grind games out, especially in the playoffs.
Makes sense. Nick, how do you feel?
If I'm Orlando, do I want to play a younger team that doesn't know anything, or am I going against Philly that is the more veteran team? I'll take the younger team, because you don't know what to expect from them. They might come out and poop the bed, and teams have done that. You've seen that too on many of occasions. Younger teams don't know how to win, and like I always refer back when you say like, what's the difference between winning and losing? Look at what Gretzky said. Gretzky was walking out, and they just lost the Stanley Cup final. They walked by the Islander dressing room. They looked in the room, and all of them, the Islanders they were celebrating, but it was relaxed, and it was like, aren't you guys supposed to be on cloud nine? You just won it. He goes, this is work. This is a veteran thing. You have to learn your way to field, and you have to build, keep building. And Gretzky took it to another level. He's the greatest hockey player of all time. But it took them 3 disappointments in the playoffs to get to where they are. Now, we've been disappointed for how many straight years? And this is a different crew. Yeah, this is a different thing. Last year we could have forced game 3, which would have been great, but you never know what would happen in Cincinnati. Yeah, we might have gotten destroyed, but does Orlando want to face us? If I'm Orlando, I would say yeah, because they're coming on too. I'll take the team that's coming out, them being a hot team against a team like us that's cold. I'll take that. I wouldn't take the veteran team that's coming on. Hell no.
They'll disrupt you. My thought is more the same as you were, because I always remember how an old adage of old sports head like myself said, young crews don't win stuff. They know how to play, but they don't know how to win. And when you put in a pressure packed environment like the playoffs or a derby, it may not be the entire team, but someone is going to crack. And when that happens, disaster ensues. So while I have a lot of faith on many of the guys that's on this team, and this team is a little different than seasons past, the only thing that's a little different is that there are some guys that have been through the disappointments, that have been through the issues that you spoke of, Nick, Carlos, and I think they remember that. I think what they want to do is that they want to turn it around. Will they? We'll see. And this is why I said, if you remember, way back in the beginning of the season when they signed Forsberg, what was the words I used? Not enough. There's just not enough veterans there. I mean, you're surrounding a veteran with pretty much a young crew. You're basically supplanted one guy who was the captain, one of the youngest captains in MLS, and then he had to hand the armband over to Forsberg. I don't think there was any ill intent over that, but now, you just got this one guy who practically willed an entire club literally from the second tier to the first tier. I mean, this, they love or hate, RB Leipzig, but he's like Henry, down there over there. They love this man. They care about this guy, so now he's with us. I've heard nothing but good things from many of the Leipzig fans that you're getting a good guy. Do us a favor and get a real team around them. Well, unfortunately, our front office is still working on that part. Hopefully they'll get the message, but I'd still like to see a couple of veterans, sprinkled in the current team that they have, and then they will really go places. Imagine that. You got a team with some old heads that know how to win, surrounded by young, raw talent. Imagine how far this team would be with that. And I sometimes, and I lament that very much. Speaking of young teams, of course, as they say, hey, Gotham FC, they made the playoffs. They punched their ticket. They're in. So they're in for getting ready for their title defense. This happened, of course, at Red Bull Arena. Of course, Gotham FC defeating Utah Royals by a score of 1-0. Yasmin Ryan, Yas Queen, got a goal that in 2 minutes in, and that's all they needed as they knocked off Utah Royals. Their next game, they're going to be on the road versus Kansas City Current, probably they are the number one team in the league. That will take place on the 28th. Kickoff is at 1 o'clock. So
Gotham, by the way, made their way to Washington, D.C. and the White House. The first NWSL team to be invited to the White House. So that is huge for not only for Gotham, not only for that team, but for the game, for the women's game, the game in general. So they were down there. They presented president with a jersey and all that fun stuff. So super neat to see.
Alex Krieger is the team's unabashed ambassador for the club. So they're definitely doing, great things on and off the pitch, for this club. So they're really becoming.
And kudos, random aside kudos to the Gotham marketing team who sends a text message today trying to get me to get Gotham season tickets.
Will you?
And the hook was they made it seem like it was a text from Ali Krieger, and it said "dinner soon?" ? And again, I was like, "This is fantastic." So naturally, I replied, right, like, "Why the heck not? Who the heck knows, right? It could be her texting me." But I was like, "I'd be honored." And then, of course, I got the reply that says, sign up for a season ticket and we'll put you in a drawing for a contest to win dinner with Ali Krieger. They're picking 5 people.
Nice.
I was like, that's pretty awesome. Like, that's a great marketing ploy.
That's an excellent marketing ploy. I mean, however you got, what's that saying? What's that say, boys? How we said, however you get them in, right? Yep. So do it, do what you need to create.
I would love to be a season ticket holder to Gotham, but at this stage in my life, not with a 10-month-old. When she's a little older, then I might be having that conversation because I feel like they'll be
you got to expose them to
around for a long time.
Yeah, pretty soon you got to expose them to the women's game. That's always great. Meanwhile, over in MSU Soccer Park, New York Red Bull 2. Remember them? The last time we saw them, they had a very tough loss. They rebounded very nicely. 2-0 win over Toronto FC 2. Tanner Rossborough. This guy is going to be, you're going to be hearing a lot about this kid. Okay. And of course, Sofo also scored 2-0. They're trying to get back into the game. Get back into the playoffs and playoff picture. They're not quite there yet, but a couple of wins and they will be. Their next game, of course, will be at home versus the New England Revolution 2, and that will take place on the 29th, 5 o'clock. That game will be on Apple TV and, of course, YouTube. They're seeing more and more games for new MLS Next Pro on YouTube rather than Apple TV, which is kind of good. You're getting able to watch the game wherever the heck you are. Meanwhile, Gotham FC and Kansas City Current can be seen on both on CBS and Paramount Plus when kickoff begins at 1 o'clock. So, which pitcher we're talking, let's take a second here and talk about MLS Next Pro, because I've been asked already, where is New York Red Bulls 2? Well, New York Red Bulls 2, believe it or not, are not that far away. They're on 11th place, and they're fading fast. So with a few games left, they really have some teams to catch up on. But right now, it doesn't look that they're going to make it. Remember, only the first 8 teams. They got a lot of teams to leap over, which is Chattanooga FC, Carolina Core, and, of course, Chicago FC 2. Luckily for them, they're losing. So they can that win was a big win for them to have 36 points. The team that has currently, Chicago FC2 has 41. So they got less than about maybe 10 games left. Think they can make it, Nick, or no?
They got 2 games left, and they're down 4 points. The last game is against Chattanooga, which will help if Chattanooga loses and we win on Saturday.
Yeah.
Sunday.
On Sunday.
So, yeah, if they win, if Red Bull 2 wins, and it gets to what do we got here? 40 points. Oh, it's kind of hard for them to get in, to be honest.
Yeah, it'll take a miracle. Let's put it that way. It'll take everybody above them to lose, and Red Bull in their next 2 games, they would have to win out in order to get that last seat at the table, and I don't see that happening. So that's the that's the end of that picture. So I guess we'll see you in 2025. Meanwhile, in WNSL action, Gotham FC is sitting very nicely in 3rd place. Orlando Pride. Did I say Kansas City Current? Kansas City Current all throughout the season, Carlos, was really the best team out there. They slipped a little bit, and Orlando Pride was just simply on fire in the last 10 games, and they're sitting pretty with first place at 51 points. Gotham FC 43. They'll get a home game. Everything is all one and done at that point. But they're setting themselves up very nicely for a quick title return. Here's a question: with the players they currently have, do you see a run back with Gotham FC?
Listen, if there's anyone that I think can do the repeat, I think it's this team. They've been fairly consistent all year long. Again, from what I've been able to watch and see from them, and that team has been there. They got, obviously, with some of the bigger names that they brought in the offseason, people who are proven winners, gold medalists, World Cup winners, and so on.
Yep.
Like they'll be able to make that run and get to that final. So obviously in a playoff format, you just never know. But they're positioned very nicely to make that run into the final.
Okay, our good friend Garry over in soccer over Gotham. We're going to bring him in next week to clear out the picture about Gotham FC and why you all should be watching this this very talented crew. And of course, that will happen next week in episode 1, 2, 3. So let's talk about predictions. I hate this point. What derbies are always fun, right? They're always tight, tense. You have no idea what's going to happen, even up to the final score. Despite that, we're going to predict one anyway. Here's my final score: 2-1, New York. It's going to be ridiculous, but I think they're going to get it done. That'll also give us, the Derby win. Remember, we're only 1 goal behind, so we'll see what happens there. Nick, what are you looking at in this match when it's all said and done in 90 minutes? Hopefully no red cards or yellow cards.
It's going to be a fight. I hope it's a fight.
Not physical, we hope.
Listen, this is a derby. You play. This is what you gear up for. These are the games you have to be ready for, and you know what's coming your way. There was a lot of. They have that. Maxi Morales is still there. He knows what's going on. He'll be there to pull the strings for them. If Emil's back and starting, I'm going to go with agree with you, Garry. 2-1 victory. I think Vanzier. I like the way Vanzier played, and I've been killing him for God knows how long.
The whole world has, but go ahead.
I think the minute he scored that goal, you saw the stress leave him.
Yeah, the entire weight was off his shoulder. He was like, "Oh, finally!" Damn.
You saw the team react differently when he scored that goal, and that might be enough to get this team going forward in the right direction, especially with Forsberg coming back. With our defense is still solid. I'm hoping it springs the thing. The return of Forsberg. Let's go for a 2-1 win. I've been wrong. I think I've been wrong on every prediction I've said, but let's try this one. Let's try this one.
Well, you're not at the bottom of the table like me. That's where I am right, right now. I am. And Carlos, who right now, oh man, you rule the roost at this point as far as the points is as concerned. Right behind you is Miguel, followed by Lonray. So Mark is then Mark is right behind him, then Nick, then finally me. I don't even know how I wound up in last place. So I mean, but I got a lot of picks wrong. Carlos, you see this going one way or another. Before you give me your prediction, what are you looking for? You're looking for a hot start? You're looking for more of the same for the match versus Atlanta?
I want 3 points, Gary. I want 3 points.
Above all.
I want a win. No, again, we want to see a consistent team, a consistent performance, 90 minutes, a full game. But I'm with you all. I see a 2-1 Red Bulls win. I think it's time to stop tying games and stop tying at home. And again, if we're gonna do it, do it against a rival, do it against City in a derby. They obviously beat us back in May, so we want that one back. So for all of those reasons and beyond, win would be fantastic, and I see that being 2-1.
All right. So and with that, of course, puts a capper on episode 122. Clear out the picture about why people should be watching Gotham FC to get ready for the title choice. But always remember, of course, you can always rewatch our show. Right now, it's also being live there at our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have X, which is formerly Twitter, you can also watch our shows live, and also you can rewind it as you wish for your watching and listening pleasure. If you have any questions, of course, any comments or anything else for our podcast, don't forget we have an email address at rbdgthepodcast@gmail.com. So, Derby Day. It's going to be a lot of fun. It should be interesting. We're knowing that everyone will be there. I'm hoping that you guys will join us too. So, for Nicholas Leanos and, of course, Carlos Cano, who's on the road, and I thank him very much for joining us. And we'd like to thank each and every one of you for your support and enjoying. We put these shows, of course, naturally for you, and it's always fun for us to do so. So, Derby Day, y'all. It's coming. And we hope to see you guys on Saturday. Until then, good night, everyone. We'll see you next week. Hope it's a win. Goodbye for now.